Okay, so get this. What if I told you that? Well, the story of Jesus, the virgin birth and the miracles and the crucifixion, the whole thing might have existed in other religions, like thousands of years earlier. Pretty mind-blowing, right? Well, that's what we're diving into today with the world's 16 crucified saviors. And huge shout out to everyone who's been keeping us fueled up with those buy me a coffee donations for just $1 a day. You can ensure your favorite podcast hosts don't pass out from exhaustion mid-deep dive. But seriously, your support means a lot. And hey, if you're ready to take your own deep dive, into self-discovery, check out our consultations and products. All the links are down in the description. So this book, it basically throws down the gauntlet. It claims there were 16 crucified saviors across the globe. Osiris, Krishna, Prometheus, the whole mythical gang, and their stories, eerily similar to Jesus's. I'm talking virgin births, threats in infancy, miracles, the whole 9 yards. To help us unpack all of this, we've got an expert in comparative mythology joining us today. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. This book really challenges us to think beyond the familiar narratives, the ones we've grown up with, and explore how human belief systems are all connected. What's fascinating is that these stories, many of them actually predate Christianity, might point to a universal human archetype, this kind of deep desire for a savior figure.
16 saviors? Come on. That can't be just a coincidence. What are some of the most striking parallels that this book points out?
Well, let's take the story of Krishna from Hindu mythology. According to ancient texts, Krishna was crucified, and his death was accompanied by this period of darkness. It kind of mirrors the biblical account of darkness during Jesus' crucifixion. It's these very specific, detailed parallels that make the book so compelling.
Hold up. So you're saying there are ancient Hindu texts that describe Krishna's crucifixion and darkness covering the land, just like in the Bible?
Yes. And that's just one example. The book details numerous parallels across various cultures and time periods. We see stories of saviors born of virgins, facing threats in their infancy, performing miracles, dying, and then being resurrected. It's a pattern that repeats across these diverse cultures, which raises some interesting questions about, the nature of belief and the human psyche.
Okay, I see where this is going. If these stories existed before Christianity, does that mean the story of Jesus is just a copycat version?
That's a question the book definitely raises. It suggests that early Christians might have adapted existing beliefs and stories to fit their own theological purposes, of course. It's important to remember the historical context. Cultures have always influenced each other. It's less about copying and more about how ideas evolve and transform as they move across cultures.
Just like a cultural remix, they took these existing savior archetypes and gave them a Christian spin.
Exactly. It's crucial to remember that the exchange of ideas and stories is how civilizations grow. The real question is, what does it mean that these savior figures are so common throughout human history? Perhaps it points to a deeper psychological need, this yearning for hope and redemption that goes beyond cultural boundaries.
I'm with you there. We all crave that sense of hope, that someone or something will come along and save us from our struggles. But this brings up an interesting point. Are you familiar with Neville Goddard?
Absolutely, a fascinating mystic who argued that Christ wasn't a historical figure, but a state of consciousness within each of us.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. When we consider this book, what if all these crucified saviors from different times and cultures are actually pointing to the same inner potential within us? Instead of looking outside ourselves for a savior, maybe the real journey is about awakening the Christ within.
That's a powerful concept. It challenges the traditional view of Christ as an external figure and places the responsibility for salvation squarely on our own shoulders.
Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper into this before we get into the nitty-gritty of these savior stories and how they connect to Neville Goddard's teachings. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
So we're back and ready to unpack these savior stories. Through the lens of Neville Goddard's teachings, the idea is that these aren't just historical accounts or myths, but blueprints for our own inner transformation.
Blueprints. Okay, I like that. Like each story's guidebook for awakening the Christ within.
Precisely. And Graves, he lays out some fascinating parallels between Jesus and other saviors, highlighting over 300 analogies between Jesus and the Hindu savior Krishna just alone.
Whoa. 300, that's a lot of analogies. Give us some highlights. What are some of the most compelling similarities?
Well, for starters, both Jesus and Krishna are said to have been of royal descent, but born into humble circumstances. Both were threatened in infancy. King Kansa, the tyrannical ruler in Krishna's story, orders the slaughter of all male infants. To eliminate Krishna, much like King Herod, attempts to kill the infant Jesus.
Okay, so both are kind of like hidden princes, destined for greatness, but facing danger from the get-go.
Exactly. It's as though they're both protected by a higher power, destined for something greater. And this theme of divine protection, it continues throughout their lives. Both are described as performing miracles and preaching a message of love and forgiveness. But what's even more interesting is their emphasis on a kingdom that's not of this world.
So both were focused on inner transformation rather than worldly power.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Their teachings weren't about gaining control of kingdoms or amassing wealth, but about conquering our inner demons, so to speak. And this aligns perfectly with Godard's idea that Christ is not a person, but a state of consciousness.
Okay, so if these savior figures are reflections of our own potential, how do we actually apply this knowledge? How do we crucify our limiting beliefs and tap into that divine potential within?
That's where Godard's teachings on the power of imagination come in, he believed. That by consciously choosing our thoughts and beliefs, we can create the reality we desire, essentially. The stories of these saviors are symbolic representations of the journey of consciousness.
So it's about retraining our minds to focus on the positive, on what we want to create, instead of dwelling on the negative.
Yes, it's about letting go of the old limiting stories we tell ourselves and embracing a new narrative of possibility. Just like these saviors overcame challenges and ultimately triumphed, we too can overcome our inner obstacles and manifest our desires.
So if we want to experience a resurrection in our own lives, we need to crucify the thoughts and beliefs holding us back.
You got it. We have to confront those negative thought patterns and choose to believe in a brighter future.
This is all very empowering. But let's be real, it can't be that easy, right? If it were that simple, wouldn't everyone be living their dream lives?
Of course, it takes conscious effort, discipline, and a willingness to confront our own shadows. It's not a magic formula, but a journey of self-discovery and transformation.
So how do we even begin to do that? How do we actually retrain our minds and tap into this power?
Godard recommends a practice he calls inner conversation. It's about engaging in a dialogue with your subconscious mind, using affirmations and visualizations to reprogram limiting beliefs.
Inner conversation. Okay, break that down for us. What exactly does that involve?
It starts with becoming aware of the thoughts and beliefs running in the background of your mind, that little voice in your head that's always chattering away.
Oh yeah, I know that voice all too well. Sometimes it feels like a nonstop negativity train.
Exactly. And that's often where our limiting beliefs reside, the ones that keep us stuck in those negative patterns. Inner conversation is about becoming aware of that voice and then consciously choosing to replace those negative messages with positive affirmations.
So instead of thinking, I'm not good enough, I should consciously replace that thought with something like, I am worthy and deserving.
Precisely. You're essentially feeding your mind with empowering beliefs rather than self-defeating ones. It's about rewriting the script of your life, becoming the author of your own story.
Okay, that's starting to click.
Yeah.
But what about those deep-seated beliefs that feel impossible to change, the ones that have been with us for years?
Those can be the most challenging, but they're not insurmountable. Godard recommended a technique called revision. Just like you can edit a document to change its meaning, you can rise your memories to change their emotional impact.
Wait, are you saying we can actually change our memories?
Not the factual events, but we can change how we feel about them. Let's say you have a painful memory from childhood. By using your imagination, you can revisit that memory and reimagine it with a different outcome, one that feels more empowering.
So instead of replaying the memory with all its negative emotions, I could imagine a different scenario, a more positive outcome.
Exactly. The key is to create a revised version. That feels good. One that empowers you rather than disempowers you. This allows you to release the emotional baggage of the past and step into a more empowered present.
This is blowing my mind. But if these savior stories are symbolic, what about the concept of sin and redemption? Did that change too?
That's a great question. In traditional Christianity, sin is an offense against God. But when we view Christ as a state of consciousness within us, as Godard suggests, the concept of sin, it takes on a whole new meaning.
Okay, so what is sin from this new perspective?
For Godard, sin is anything that separates us from our true nature, from the divine spark within us. It's those moments when we forget our inherent worthiness and give in to fear, doubt, and negativity.
So it's not about breaking rules.
Yeah.
but about disconnecting from our true selves.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
redemption then becomes about remembering who we truly are, about reconnecting with that divine spark within. It's about waking up to our own inherent worthiness, recognizing that we are expressions of divine love and wisdom.
This is making me rethink everything. I thought I knew about religion. So how do we actually experience this redemption? How do we reconnect with that divine spark?
It's about cultivating a state of consciousness that aligns with our desired reality, choosing thoughts and beliefs that support our highest good. If we want to experience more love and abundance in our lives, we need to cultivate those qualities within ourselves first. It's about transforming our inner world to reflect the outer world. We want to create.
Wow. That's a lot of responsibility. It's like we're in charge of creating our own reality.
It's a big responsibility, but it's also incredibly empowering because it means we're not victims of circumstance. We have the power to choose our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And in doing so, we can create a reality that reflects our highest potential. We are not at the mercy of fate.
It's almost like we all have these hidden superpowers, but most of us don't even realize it.
That's a great analogy. We have the power to heal ourselves, transform our relationships, create abundance, and make a difference in the world. But it all starts with recognizing that power within ourselves.
Okay. You've given us a lot to think about today. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing. That idea of ascending to a higher level of consciousness, what does that actually look like?
For God, ascension is about transcending the limitations of the ego and aligning with our true nature. It's about shifting our identity from the separate self, the ego, to the universal self, the Christ within.
So it's about letting go of the idea that we're separate individuals and recognizing our interconnectedness with everything.
Exactly. It's about realizing we're all part of a larger whole, all expressions of the same divine source. We are coming home to ourselves, to that place of unity and wholeness.
This has been such a mind-blowing deep dive. I
Wow.
feel like my whole perspective on religion and spirituality has shifted.
Exploring these different perspectives can really open up new worlds of understanding.
I'm definitely going to be reflecting on everything we've talked about today. And for everyone listening, if you're feeling inspired to embark on your own journey of self-discovery, check out the resources and consultations we have available. All the links are down in the description. We'd love to support you on your path.
Absolutely. We would also love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Share your insights, your questions, your aha moments in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going.
Until next time, keep diving deep.